People often say, think about a story that you would want to read, then go and write that. While it's great to think about stories that inspire you, I know it's difficult to actually begin writing that story. Hi, my name's Sid, and on this channel I document my journey of learning the skills I need to be a self-sufficient creative. So far on this channel I've talked about the importance of storytelling, and if you haven't watched that video, I recommend you check it out after this one. I'll put a link down in the description. I've also talked about world building and character development, which are both important when it comes to writing your story. In this video, I'm going to take you through some of the steps that will make it attainable for you to actually write the first draft for your story. I'm going to be discussing a lot of different outlines and procedures in this video, but it's important to keep in mind that what makes your story unique is you, and the person that you are, not the structure. Be sure to tell an honest story, and make sure that your writing is a record of who you are. People generations from now can learn about the person that you are just by reading your stories. So now that I've gotten that out of the way, here's how you can actually start writing a story. You can use these steps for screenplays, books, video game stories, anything, you name it. The first step is to set up your ideal writing workspace. I'm going to link to a video where I teach you how to develop a writing ritual right here. But to put it simply, make sure that you're in an area that's free of distractions while you're writing. And it might also be a good idea to gather any notes that you may have taken previously regarding your story. The next step is to briefly outline your story. For this, I recommend that you use the story circle that's developed by Dan Harmon. This helps you create a simple outline of how you want your story to be structured. I recommend starting by writing 1 to 2 sentences for each of the steps on the circle. The first step on the circle is to establish your protagonist and set up the status quo, which is basically the normal world within your story. I recommend you check out my character development video if you need more help with your protagonist. Next up, you explain what the protagonist actually wants. This serves as the call to action or the call to adventure. It essentially serves as the spark in their journey. Next, you're going to need to establish an unfamiliar situation that the protagonist will need to enter. This is where they leave the normal world behind and commit to their journey. After that, the protagonist must search for an answer that will fulfill what they want. This is where they adapt to the unfamiliar situation that you set up previously. A good example of this is when Batman faces off with the Joker in The Dark Knight. The next step is where the protagonist obtains their want that was established at the beginning. But this is not necessarily the end of the story. They have to pay a heavy price for what they wanted, and the hero needs to make a sacrifice. Think about in A New Hope, when Obi-Wan sacrifices himself so that Luke and the others can escape. After making that sacrifice, they return back to their familiar situation, but with an advantage. Their advantage could be a physical item, it could be a person, or simply a lesson learned. The final step is making sure that the protagonist experiences a change. This could be a physical change, but most often it's a psychological change, almost like a shift in value. This is where they learn that what they wanted at the beginning is less important than what they actually needed. I recommend you guys check out the video where I discuss Makise Kurisu from Steins Gate. This shows a great example of the difference between the want and the need. Okay, so I know that this 8-step story structure could be a lot to remember, so that's why I've decided to include a free downloadable template so that you don't have to remember all of it. Something that I want you to keep in mind is that this structure is meant to help you outline your story, not write the story for you. What's important is that you write a couple of sentences for each section on the circle when you're getting started, and then move on to the next step, which is to create character profiles for key characters. This is important as it allows you to map the journey of your characters by giving them arcs. You can even record smaller details about their personality, or more important things such as the role that they serve within the plot that you've already outlined. Luckily, I have a video where I discuss character development, and you can also find my free character profile template in the description. After you've drafted your first outline and created a few profiles for some important characters, it's time to add some scenes to your story. Try thinking about the smaller interactions between your characters that you've created, and think about how this will help move your plot along. You should add short 1 or 2 sentence descriptions for your scenes to your plot outline, and this will help you keep everything organized while you're writing the first draft of your story. Once you've added basic scene descriptions to your outline, it's time to actually begin writing your first draft. For a lot of people, this really is the hardest part, starting that first draft. I know that writers often find themselves getting stuck at this stage because, they try and critique every little thing that they come up with. To help with this, I recommend that you do 2 things. The first is to allow yourself to be immersed in the writing process. This is where the writing ritual can really shine. It's important to be free of distractions so that you can focus easier. Remember that the first draft is about getting words onto the page. The first draft doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to exist. You will have plenty of time afterwards to revise your story. The second thing that I recommend is to set limits for each section of the writing process. Just as an example, consider only spending about an hour on the basic outline. Then you spend maybe another hour or so on your character profiles, and then after that spend no more than 2 days of work writing your first draft. Afterwards, take a step away for a few hours before reading the draft back. Your story doesn't have to be any specific number of pages. Just make sure that you try and fill every section of your outline with writing. It most certainly does not have to be perfect, because after it's written, you can start revising everything. Let me know in the comments below if you would want to see a video dedicated to revising your first draft. Hopefully the steps that I detailed in this video will help you when it comes to starting to write your story. If you found this information valuable, I would appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to the channel. Every week I discuss another aspect of my journey to becoming a self-sufficient creative. I'll also link my Instagram account down below where you can follow my journey on there too.